Hello, everybody. Welcome to What Would Your Ideal World Be? A new podcast which examines many important people and the important things in their lives, what they think about most current trends at the moment, what they think about certain subject matters, and of course, what their ideal world would be. As part of a special series covering the Wakefield by-election, today's guest is Jordan Gaskell, who is running under the UKIP banner. He is the party's current mental health spokesman and general manager for the Manchester branch. Okay, so yeah, thank you for coming on. And the first question I wanted to ask you is that you've just been elected as the MP for Wakefield, and you just entered Parliament for the first time. What is the first major policy that you seek to achieve while there, and who will you work with in order to achieve it?
Well, the main policies I want to push forward would be the scrapping of net zero emissions policies. The reason why for that is because it's a major impact on the increase in cost of living. It's a good 20 to 30% of your bills with your council tax, etc. A good 20-30% of that amount is actually because of net zero emissions policies. By scrapping them, of course, would help the cost of living crisis massively. So I think that would be one of the biggest national policies for me to start pushing through Parliament if I do get elected this time. On a national scale, that is, but of course it will help a lot of people on a local level as well. But in terms of local policies, I think the first thing I would do would be more looking after the neglected areas within the Wakefield ward, such as Lupset ward. That would be a big example right there of a ward that has been let go over time, and I can help the people there, hopefully the more financially struggled people within the Wakefield ward.
Mm-hmm. And first got you involved in politics, or to use the colloquialism, what was your red pill moment?
Yes. Well, first started getting curious to say about politics when we had the Scottish independence referendum. By then I was still, I think I was about 14, 13. I was just I started getting curious into politics, how it worked and all that. I looked into it, looked at every party. I didn't want to have any bias, so I looked at every single party in the country I could find. From the Liberal Democrats, they didn't last very long in my mind. The Tories, the Labour Party, I even looked into the more questionable parties. So, you got to go in with a blank slate and look at everybody fairly. Found the British Communist, Marxist and Leninist Party, even had a look at them. They were fascinating. Even found out the British still have a fascist party, the New British Union. Not my cup of tea, but they exist.
All 6 of their members?
I think they only have 200 members, the New British Union now. But basically, after that, I started to get actively involved just after turning 16. So I was in 2019. With the Brexit constant delay, I got tired of it. I got involved at demos, and eventually, by the end of being 16, I was organising protests with over 100 people, multiple protests within the Wigan borough, from Wigan, Lee, a few places like that. And I just got my way up over time, and now I'm currently the wellbeing and mental health spokesman for UKIP, along with a few other roles as well. So I've obviously made my way up over time, and obviously involved in a variety of different movements over time, from Children Matter News, fighting against the grooming gangs and forced adoption assets, to the Liberty Uprising movement, which was a very anti-lockdown, anti-further restrictions movement. So started actively, I'd say, at 16, and now I'm 19, and I feel I've certainly made my way up the ladder over time.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I did want to ask you about is that one thing I constantly actually hear from a lot of the sort of like the popular sort of right types, if you don't mind me saying, is stuff about forced adoptions. And that seems to be a big grievance of theirs. What does that consist of, and how's that come about, and what would you propose as a parliamentarian possibly to change it?
What forced adoption basically is, there's a lot of issues in the country when parents so in many cases get separated from the children completely, and it can have a lot of bad mental effects on the child and of course the parent. There's children that can be taken off parents just because the parents can struggle, even mentally. If a parent has depression or anxiety, for example, there's many cases where children are taken off the parents just because of the diagnosis of that and the parent, which isn't always the right thing to do. And there's obviously children that get put up for adoption and not allowed to see their own parents. There's very, very rare occasions where I would say that is actually suitable to happen. And the majority of cases, I'd argue that does happen. It isn't for good reasons at all. Overall, I think if getting elected, one of the best things that could be done is an investigation of corruption within family courts. There is a lot of bias and corruption within family courts, especially gender bias, which is quite a big one. Of course, the woman normally is automatically favoured. Sometimes it does happen the other way around as well, of course, but the woman is normally automatically favoured when it comes to custody of children, etc. So family courts would be one of the biggest things I need to investigate, that and social services, as there is quite a heavy bias there as well, and a lot of corruption that does go on within the social services as well. So investigations of corruption and bias would be the biggest priority in terms of tackling that if I get elected.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking about Brexit and all the stuff about the Brexit delays during 2019, which feels like a millennium ago now, weirdly enough. But one thing on UKIP, actually, in terms of its relevance now, is that following the EU referendum and Brexit, what can UKIP offer the voters of Wakefield and to them? And more specifically, what can they offer over other right-wing parties that are standing in this election, whether it be the Conservative Party, the English Democrats, or Reform UK, among others? What could UKIP offer the voters of Wakefield, and what could offer more specifically voters who are more inclined to the right?
Well, heavily, the biggest mistake people think of when they think of UKIP, of course, you've brought up the Brexit time, so which is obviously the main thing that UKIP was known for. And the problem was we've always been it's always been our name, and even after we've left the EU, we are still the United Kingdom Independence Party. People often ask, what are we even saying we're independent for anymore? Now, in reality, we've been always about more than just independence from the EU. We're on about independence from big government, effectively, from censorship and restrictions from the government, from the tax burdens, etc. So it's personal independence, personal freedoms, individualism, effectively. That's what it stands for, the independence in the United Kingdom Independence Party. In comparison to other parties on the right wing, we are one of the only we pretty much are the only right wing party that stands with proportional representation. The only other party that does campaign for it is all the way over on the left, which is the Liberal Democrats, which have a lot more other policies, which we'll go into in a minute, which we differ with. With proportional representation, anyone doesn't know this, it's an easy example. I always use this, but it's a perfect example, I think, in any case to use. So you've got 3 constituencies, you've got 10,000 people that vote in each one, let's say, and there's only 2 parties in each one standing. So you have Conservative and Labour in both ones. Let's say Conservative got 6,000 votes in all 3 constituencies. So that's 6, 12, 18. That's 18,000 votes. It's the majority in each constituency, so that is 3 MPs. Where Labour would have 4, 8, 12,000 votes there, and wouldn't be worth a single MP. So 16,000 people is therefore, I calculate that, 6, 12. So 18,000 people is worth 3 MPs, where 12,000 people would be worth 0 MPs. So you can see there's a very big issue in terms of the voting system, how it represents people. So UKIP's policies on reformed voting systems would be one of the biggest. I feel we have a perfect balance when it comes to our right-wing ideology. We are a right-wing party, but we have the right balance, I'd say, overall. I don't say we're too far to the right or too far to the left. I think we're in the perfect position overall on the scale for people to vote for. We're not a radical party, we're not prescribed. A lot of parties on the further right, such as Britain First, etc., are prescribed groups. the class as under the police actual police records. It does state them as a prescribed group. If you wanted to join the police and you was a member of Britain First, you wouldn't be allowed. For example, while UKIP on the other hand, you are allowed. This is going off what they identify as people as, of course, as well. So that would be one of the biggest things there. We are essential right party, which the media does often make out that we're not, although we are. Of course, we have many other policies where the left-wing parties do not tackle. That starts from the scrapping of... sorry, don't know why I'm stuttering a bit today. I was trying to go through all the things. Obviously, we've had to re-record some things here. Obviously, scrapping the net zero emissions policies would be quite a big one that we stand for, and against the new clean air zones that are coming out. We are in favour of protecting the environment, but we have to do it at a stable rate, effectively, that isn't going to burden an already struggling working class. We believe in controlled immigration. We're not against immigration. We're against we're against when there's too many people coming out at once. We want a sensible cap upon immigration. And we do want to acknowledge the fact that people coming over as asylum seekers, some of them are breaking the rules in terms of asylum seeking to begin with, such as when you're supposed to go through the first safe country to seek asylum. Let's say someone was coming out from Syria. We're going to use Syria as an example. They'd have to go through Turkey. Then from Turkey, they have to go through Greece. Then from Greece, they go through Macedonia. Then Macedonia, it's Serbia. Then Croatia. Then Herzegovina and Bosnia. Said that wrong way around, but it's all right. Then Slovenia, Austria, Germany, and then obviously to France to go through the English Channel. There's quite a few safe countries I've just named before the get here, so we want sensible control over our borders. And of course, political correctness is something we do quite a lot in fighting. We believe in complete free speech. We don't condone any type of harassment or anything like that. We'll never support anything like that. But we do believe in, obviously, removing a lot of the shackles of political correctness effectively. And also the policies which the Conservatives have stole some of our policies in order to get in their manifesto this year, which they haven't delivered. They promised to secure the borders. They've not done any good job at all doing that. They promised to scrap TV licences. That's been a UKIP policy from the beginning. That hasn't been integrated yet. So obviously, we're all still paying our TV licences. We have other policies outside of that that would make things easier for the people of the country, such as the scrapping of prescription charges, which I think would help quite a lot of people.
And funnily enough, I just wanted to pick up on one point you raised. So how do you feel about Nadine Dorries, the Culture Secretary, when she came out a few months ago? This is part of Operation Redmi, I think it was called, according to the Times, where she came out and said essentially that we are going to actually scrap the license fee or something along those lines by 2027. So do you feel like they're actually going to go through on that? They're just saying it to, stop people from complaining that they're not doing anything to the right?
It's just anything they can do to promise to get elected. This is the problem with most big parties now. They'll promise anything effectively to get elected. Once they're actually in, what they'll do is another question. You won't see them till election time again for the most part. Unfortunately, I don't have any faith in the Conservative Party. I used to have faith in them when they first came in. I generally had faith in Boris. I did what everyone tells you not to do. I trusted a Tory. But it's something, I gave Boris a chance and I really had faith in him, but he has become a massive letdown to me personally. I'd say they're not going to deliver the promise on the TV licenses. It's more money for them. And the BBC does support a lot of what their agenda is half the time in comparison to parties such as UKIP. A lot of the main media stations such as the BBC are very much against any party such from UKIP, BNP, Britain First, anything that's not the main parties pretty much just gets absolutely slammed by the mainstream media, unfortunately. And I don't see Boris or anyone in the Conservative Party going to do anything in order to deliver what they've promised. It's just another way to get elected for them.
And one thing you also raised earlier was about, you were talking about custodial cases of family courts. On that, I wanted to discuss the fact that on your YouTube channel, which I checked out, you have often highlighted the problems with the way men are treated in British society. And although this was a British case, mind you, including that with the recent Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, What do these problems consist of in your eyes, and how would you, as an MP, work to resolve such issues?
I think the biggest issue there is similar. We've discussed with gender, racism, everything really. The big issue is the lack of correct education on what things are. For example, with sexism, for example, you do learn a lot in education where the stereotypes that women have to go through, things like that. But there are stereotypes that men have to go through that we don't get educated on. When men, for example, who are mentally struggling, get told just to man up, etc. That would just be one of many examples where, of course, a woman can, in many cases, women do hit men. But if a man hits a woman, it's immediately, even without evidence, and in many cases there has been, where the woman's believed, same as rape cases, etc., where the woman has said something's happened. A woman could literally, for example, say that she was raped by someone after it being consensual, and that man would be jailed for rape. It's quite a scary situation, but men do suffer discrimination in the same ways, though. So I think the best thing would be is re-educating people to know that sexism can go from men towards women and women towards men. It can go both ways, and the same principles apply with racism. For example, yes, white people can be racist towards people of other colours, such as black people. Yes, it can happen, but white people can also be subject to racial abuse, such as it's quite common in the southern parts of Spain, where there are white men who get called by the more Arabic speakers when they are referred to as crackers. Obviously, the N-word's the racial word for us, but they use the word for white people, crackers. We could argue that could be offensive to some of us. Personally, I generally don't care what people call me. Look, some people could make that argument that it's racist and you're calling someone on the result of their skin colour. In South Africa, there's a lot more violent examples, but of course, there's a lot of white people being killed off by some of the black groups in South Africa, because there is a major racism problem there. Racism, again, can happen both ways. So the main issue would be there is trying to correctly educate people that these things can happen both ways, black on white, white on black, male on female, female on male.
And funnily enough, another thing I want to ask on that is that you're also UKIP's current mental health spokesperson, and you run your own charity on this. If you were to become an MP, what actions would you take to solve the worsening issues surrounding the mental health of Britons, especially young ones and children?
That's a very good question. The mental health service is beyond a joke. I mean, a lot of my mental health experience comes from my personal experience. I had a lot of issues. I'm open about my story. I mean, I trusted a friend when I was younger on a lot of personal things. And over time, some friends, as soon as you have fallout, gossip everywhere, and eventually you just don't seem to care the same anymore, because by this point you might as well talk about it, everyone knows anyway. And it's not nice, but it makes you stronger in the long run. And I've had issues with depression, anxiety. I am autistic as well, and I have openly admitted I have attempted on my life before now. Even it's not pleasant, but I'm open about my story, and that's got me used to what a lot of people have to go for. It allows me to be empathetic towards helping people, which I have helped quite a few via my charity already. For mental health, the Gaskell's Mental Health Initiative, for anyone who doesn't know the name of the charity that's watching. And overall, I think some of the major issues is there is a lack of mental health staff for starters. I mean, for CAMS, for example, which is the under 18s mental health service, in hospitals, they work Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. If you have any issues outside of that, you can be waiting for ages. You could be waiting for days. You could be waiting for hours. You can end up, it's overnight, or if it's after 5 p.m, right, you're going to have to wait till morning. They'll have to keep you overnight, but taking up more hospital beds, more space, more time. If you had something happen on Friday, you'd be waiting the entire weekend before you get seen. It's no good whatsoever. There's a lack of staff, and the waiting times are beyond a joke. So recruitment would be one of the biggest things I'd advise there to tackle that issue. In addition to that, I think one of the biggest things we could do as well is better education within schools for mental health. You'll have an occasional assembly, probably about every 3 months or something, about a little bit of awareness. not really going into too much depth of it, really, being just a quick PowerPoint and then they've done it, so they can say they've done it for the sake of virtue signaling and acting like they've actually done something when they haven't. I believe in the idea of possibly implementing a GCSE mental health course within schools. I feel that would help a lot of people help each other and be more sympathetic towards people who do have mental health issues, and even possibly stop some mental health issues occurring in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And also, is that on a completely different subject, actually, but this is discussing your channel still, if you don't mind. On your channel, as well as the party itself, illegal immigration is a major concern, and I must say I have some sort of experience of this because I live near a hotel where there's a lot of asylum seekers. Anyway, but how bad is the problem at the moment in terms of all this stuff? And how would you, as you and UKIP currently see anyway, and how serious is it as a concern of the constituents of Wakefield?
In terms of Wakefield directly, it doesn't seem to be the biggest issue in Wakefield. There's not as many coming over to that area. So in terms of the Wakefield constituency, it isn't as prioritised for them, but it varies in the country. For example, where I live in the Wigan area, there's not as many here. Where if I go 10 miles down the road to Bolton, on the other hand, it's a bit of a racist joke to be fair to say, but there's a saying that they say, and they say when you go Bolton, it's like playing Where's Spot the Whitey, Where's the Whitey, stuff like that, like Where's Waldo with the Whitey. And I didn't understand it until I did a charity walk up there, and I did understand what they mean. To be fair, the white population of white British people is actually quite significantly non-existent there, pretty much, I'd argue. And I do believe overall statistically, we're looking by 2040, 2050 area, at least half the nation nearly being people originally from foreign countries with foreign traditions, foreign cultures, foreign religion. Foreign religion, of course, from that of the country's original religion and founding religions. It's not that we don't want to help people, but we have to have a sensible cap on how many people we have. I mean, London alone, they've been letting in more and more than any over there in London. Now, London, going to some statistics from about 2017, London's 44.9% British there. That's actual British, not just English, that's Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish, from the Protectorate areas, Falklands, Gibraltar, etc. These are people with actual citizenship who might have immigrated over here. That's a very small amount that's actually British left in London. We might be a multicultural country, but multiculturalism arguably only works when the people that are originally from the origin, actually are the ones that have the majority still. That's the way multiculturalism arguably works. When we have too many people coming in at once, we can't possibly regulate or have the infrastructure to support that. The crime is going up as a result. We have jobs becoming harder and harder to get hold of. Housing is a nightmare to afford as it is. Never mind building enough homes for all the people that we do have it coming in. The major issue is we just can't help this many people at once. So it is quite a major issue on a national perspective, especially, yes.
Mm-hmm. And on that is like, how do you feel about recent news that actually came out, again, according to the Times, or might be the Telegraph, I think, that there were granted, I think it was 1 million visas to new arrivals over the last year or so, which is like the highest in British history, even more so than anything during the Blair years. How do you feel that this government, essentially, which came on a platform in its manifesto openly stated to reduce the overall numbers, is now doing this? Why do you think that is? Is it because, there's too many vested interests?
I think that the reason they're taking so many in is one reason I couldn't possibly even tell you to an extent of why the government wants to keep allowing so many people to come in at once. I don't see anything productive for it whatsoever. Yes, you can get cheaper labour by doing it on one hand. That is the only favourable thing they do. There's a lot of companies that do go out there and recruit foreign industries because they will work for cheaper. Which is understandable on the business's perspective, but the people who are actually born here, who've done everything they can end up in situations where they don't get anything. When you have people coming over, if they say they're asylum seekers or whatever, they will get hotels and houses a lot quicker than people actually born and bred here. There was a lady just in my hometown who spent over a year on emergency housing waiting list. She has 2 children, single mother, 2 children, over a year, just over a year. I think it was 1 year and 1 month before she actually got to move into her own emergency housing. Well, when when Afghanistan, when we took some in from there on the other hand, within less than a month of announcing it, we already had some actually staying in one of the parts of the Wigan borough. That have all been freed up, some houses just given straight to them, which really is not acceptable whatsoever. We've got to look after our own first. Charity starts at home. It's not that we don't want to help people, but if you're born in this country and you've done everything you can, and you're told that someone else can just have an home from another side of the world, can just have an house, what you need, you can see where the issue is, of course. So I think it's very bad that we keep allowing so many in. We economically can't afford to look after this people. We don't have the infrastructure to support this many people, and especially with this country supposedly supposed to be going towards a food shortage potentially. Letting in more and more people is definitely one of the worst things we could possibly do.
Mm-hmm. And on that is actually just one quick thing is that what would you think that it'll eventually take for any sort of government to stop more mass immigration? Because one of the things that's funny enough that Brexit was on, and Boris Johnson and running on and stuff like that was on the immigration issue. That was one of the big pieces. Like, if all of that wasn't convincing enough to stop mass immigration, what do you think will tip the thing over the edge? Essentially, will it be parts like yourself doing well again, or do you think that what would be the turning point where we'd actually see this change? Because it's only a recent thing.
Well, the problem was with what we didn't get fully the Brexit that we did want. Boris did do some parts of the Brexit. It made some sense of progress to an extent, but we are still paying the pension. We are still paying money towards the EU until the pensions run out on all the MEPs we've had within the EU. Back when we did have representatives within the European Union, our fishing industry was pretty much completely sold out. You have vessels from Portugal, Spain, even Italy that do come around, especially on the Newcastle side of the nation, around the waters there. There's constant reports of them being spotted there, Spanish ships, Portuguese, Italian, the list goes on. So our fishing waters were completely sold out, which was one of the bigger promises as well. So Boris did let us down a lot, and immigration as well. A lot of within the European Union treaties and organisations within the Union, he did leave us signed up to. We didn't get the Brexit fully that we voted for. Boris did go for a bit more of a soft touch approach, unfortunately. It was big to preach about what he was going to do, but what he actually did was another question. So there's a lot of things that Boris left us signed up to. One of the first things I'd say would be one of the best options for us. I think it's the 1952 Refugee Convention that 51. We are actually in favour of withdrawing. 51, not 52. I was close, 1 year off.
Fair enough.
But we are of course in favour actually of withdrawing from that. We are in favour of obviously helping people that need help, but when you've got people coming over seeking asylum, saying that they're refugees from a war-torn country, etc., they're supposed to stop in the first safe country, and they don't do that. That's why we would withdraw from treaties such as that. The 1951, I remember now, 1951 Refugee Convention, and any other treaties such as that, and potentially rewrite a different list of treaties for us to abide by in order to try to limit how many are coming over and claiming asylum who aren't actually seeking asylum in the correct way. They're supposed to stop in the first safe country, and that's what they need to do. We can only help so many people at once, and also to try and stop the illegal immigration, because what you do have a lot of people doing, they effectively throw away any form of ID. They have passports, whatever. They could literally just throw that in the ocean, don't worry about that. As far as they're concerned, I'm from Syria, I'm from Afghanistan, I'm from Ukraine, whatever, and then they get that asylum. And that's something that we do need to certainly be aware of. And of course, some new legislation in place would help us tackle that, I'd argue. it's still a major issue. People don't talk about it as much now Brexit's out of the way, because a lot of people think it will automatically start stopping now, but it's unfortunately not going to do that, especially as long as Boris is having the stance that he does have on it at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And the next question I wanted to ask you is that what are the biggest issues that get raised on the doorstep when you're campaigning in Wakefield, or when you're holding like campaign days or whatever it is? Like, what are the biggest concerns that people have?
I think the cost of living was one of the biggest, and we do have a lot to help people with that. Scrapping prescription charges would help not only people with cost of living, but it links back to the mental health side, people with mental health medications, so they can actually get that for free. So that would be a big one. Scrapping the TV license, unlike Boris promising to do it, we will actually do it. It's been in our manifesto from day one of the party's foundation. Scrapping net zero emissions policies, even if it's just done temporarily, it will give the people the break they need. And scrapping, of course, projects such as the clean air zones, which we don't believe to be productive whatsoever. We would cut money, we would save money in other areas by cutting down on health tourism. And also that train line that's still under production.
HS2?
HS2, that's it. I know it's something something 2. But that one, of course, we don't believe to be a productive project, especially with how much of the Greenland it actually destroys and how much it's costing to actually make. If we convert the money that we would be spending on that, how many grants we could actually offer to help people already struggling, I believe would be a fantastic solution to help a lot of the people already struggling. And one of the other ones that we have, I think the cost of living has been the main one at the moment, which is obviously understandable for a lot of people. I'd say that's, sorry, just getting comfortable. So you can tell I'm like half asleep. I need another cup of tea while I'm out of sugar. So I apologise to anyone watching if I'm a bit sleepy. But overall, I think the second one we have had is mainly freedom of speech, which has been quite popular. And immigration, not as much so, but freedom of speech has been. I mean, I had an action day on Saturday in Wakefield, and Stand Up to Racism was there.
Oh, that lovely bunch.
Oh, yeah. They started screaming Britain first to racist starters while we sat there with a UKIP taxi with a big UKIP logo on the side. But, you know, Britain first to racist. Yes, we're not Britain first, but keep shouting at us, stand up to racism, keep doing it. And, you know, this lady came over and started singing, "Where's your Farage gone? Where's your Farage gone?" And it was so funny, to be fair. She was trying to annoy us, though, and she was there kicking off saying, you know, you hide behind, she tries to claim we hide behind free speech, but our free speech shouldn't be allowed because it hurts people and upsets people, and it's discriminatory. It's arguably discriminatory and hurtful to us that our opinions aren't valued and that we are called all these racist and nasty names and all that we're called as a result of having a different opinion. So it's a bit of quite obviously a complete hypocrisy on their part. Stand Up to Racism are absolute joke. They don't support anti-racism. They're absolute loud gobs. Pain in the rear ends, I'd describe them as. I'm trying to be polite. I don't like swearing, especially on videos. But it's absolute disaster. Free speech is a big one there. I've talked to a few people though, and it's come to a point where you can't say anything. What UKIP believes is the rights to say as you believe, and the rights to criticise even. We don't support, as I said, anything that is generally out of order. Like if you went over to someone who was black and said you hated them because they were black, that wasn't right in our eyes. But if you hated somebody who was black because whatever reason, as long as they had some sort of reason, they have the rights to do that. But in the modern way, where people get the wrong idea, where you criticise a Muslim, you're an Islamophobe, you criticise a black person, you're a racist, you criticise a woman, you're a sexist. It's not how it's supposed to be. So it's something that we want to tackle to the point where we have free speech, but at the same time, just enough limitations so we're not having hostility towards people just as a result of gender, race, or religion.
And I will go admittedly one step ahead of you in terms of status racism because they're just a bunch of commie bastards, but that's just my attitude because I've had bad dealings with them before. It's up to me that they be prescribed, but that's just my attitude. Anyway, the next thing I wanted to ask you was actually, Do you think that one thing that could benefit you in this election is the fact that given that Wakefield is kind of a swing seat at the moment, and the fact that the Conservative Party is sort of mired in scandal, especially with their former MP, I'm not going to name him, being, I don't know how I could be polite as I can be, a sex pest.
Let's say. Yeah. A very naughty man for
yeah,
being
a sex pest. I'll just leave it there. And Labour essentially being, also not particularly popular either. Do you think that's a way you could break through, is the fact that both parties are mired in scandal and sleaze is sort of like, general sort of, benign hatred of them by much of the electorate? Do you think that's a way that a party like yourself could do very well in this election?
It could help us, certainly, yes. The problem we have is a lot of people only see the main parties. They don't see the point of voting for other parties. And with the voting system being what it is, it really doesn't help whatsoever with the current past-the-post voting system. This is why we favour proportional representation, especially in general elections. By-elections and locals, it still is worth voting for us more than anything. People need to remember the smaller parties. People vote for what they see as the better of two evils. They will vote for Labour if they don't like the Conservatives. They'll vote for Conservatives if they don't like Labour, and they forget about the other parties. There is issues with parties with some similar policies going against each other. Of course, Reform are standing, the Freedom Alliance are standing, and we do have similarities, but the problem you have with a lot of parties is they want to be the ones in charge. Like I asked Reform came up to us and said that, we should join them. And we said, well, why don't you join us then? Well, no, our party's better. And it was just, that's the problem you have. You have egos effectively, and there's no real need for it whatsoever. I'm open to working with anybody who I think is in the best interest of the people I'm supposed to represent. I mean, when I organised Brexit demonstrations, I was a member of UKIP. I did invite other parties to have their say. There was the Greater Manchester Conservative Chair had a speech. The English Democrat Stephen Morris, he spoke. UKIP leader at the time, Richard Brain, he spoke, but the Brexit Party guy was supposed to come, but he didn't show up. He said he was going to do, but didn't show up. Lovely. But overall, I think the main issue we have is the egos that do get in the way, and parties that effectively split the vote between each other, and they have very similar ideas. But it doesn't mean it's not worth voting whatsoever. It's important that everyone who can vote does vote. Your vote does matter. I mean, most of the time you get less than 50% of whatever area that votes who are eligible to vote, which is quite unfortunate. In locals, when I stood, only 20% of the area voted, which was very, very low turnout. So that is the biggest issue, I'd say. But I think if enough people get motivated to vote and they say they've had enough, and they give the acknowledgement to the smaller parties, the parties that are generally filled with public servants, not politicians who are used to getting elected by default, I think things could be so much better for Wakefield. And with it swinging between Tories and Labour, both aren't very particularly liked there, I'm very much hoping, I'm sure that many people will choose the smaller parties as the alternatives in this election.
Mm-hmm. And one quick anecdote before I keep going, like any of the other people who are standing this by-election can hop on here as well, including the Freedom Alliance guy I've emailed, and he said he was interested, but he hasn't come back to me. I'm still waiting on that. He can come on if he likes. But the next question I wanted to ask you was that, going back to the cost of living crisis stuff, on that, your party has promised to scrap the BBC license fee and to scrap net zero. But what more immediate measures could be taken now in order to give an extra hand to those in need at this difficult time?
Well, I did kind of cover that before, I'd say, but obviously scrapping them would be immediately less bills for people to pay. With the scrapping of HS2, the new train line, obviously, as soon as you scrap that, then there's more money that's not going into that pothole of an investment, effectively. The black hole of an investment, I would describe it as by this point. The money could be put into potential grants, because there is some grants being offered by the government now. Of course, the £150 council tax rebate, for example. But of course, we could do even more grants to help people with that money, and more investments in order to get people back in the workforce. One thing as well we would like to address is the lower taxes for smaller businesses, which would help quite a lot of getting people both back into work and growing the economy in the long run. Problem is, when you tax small businesses too much, especially after all the COVID restrictions, etc., they've had to go through, it means that they can either not employ extra staff, meaning less jobs for people in the long run, or they can't make the necessary profit to even stay open, costing the government more money in the long run. So low taxes for the smaller businesses would help both employment and financial recovery. After all the restrictions on and off, and of course, it would be a massive help, I'd argue.
And the next thing we'll discuss is that on your Instagram page, when you announced your candidacy, one of the things you highlighted was you would fight against the, as you saw it, failed idealism of cancel culture. What examples are there in the real world of this cancel culture phenomenon happening, and how would you, as an MP, stem the tide against it? You've already sort of hinted at it, but what are the the biggest steps you could take in order to sort of stem the tide?
I'd say that overall, that's a very good one. Problem is what we have with political correctness is obviously there's a lot of rules and regulations in a lot of workplaces that don't actually work in favour of what they're supposed to do. Some workplaces have to obey, they have to have a certain amount of women or a certain amount of people of colour. Same with even places like Hollywood, that has took a lot of a dip, a very big dive overall. I'd say a lot more than a dip, a dive, as a matter of fact, in terms of views and popularity as a result of some of these rules. A lot of people do get frustrated with them. I mean, when they try to, I'm not often against black women or women in general or people of colour in movies, obviously, I don't care less, or in the workplace. But there shouldn't be rules in place saying you have to have a certain amount of people of colour or gender. It shouldn't have rules like that. It's supposed to hire people regarding who does what at their job, not hire them because of skin colour or gender. That in itself is pretty discriminatory. And with movies, it's similar. I've nothing against strong female characters. I mean, Wonder Woman, for example, I generally love the movie. And I'm not just saying that because the actor was fit as anything. I'm not just saying that, although that is a bonus. But when you get movies such as the new Doctor Who, for example, he's always been the standard white doctor in Doctor Who, and now it's the black guy off
Sex Education.
Yeah, he's taken over it. In James Bond, the last, I don't know if you've watched
Yes, I have, yes.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, spoilers ahead, just in case. Kaiser Soze is the bad guy.
Well, basically, what happens, obviously, I'm sure you're aware, James dies, but there's another 007, which is this black woman. She's 007, and I think it's very safe to assume that she will be the next James Bond, effectively. 007, the other old 007's dead now. I do believe that she would be the next character, and it's that type of thing that I don't agree with, is when they do it just for the sake of showing diversity. I don't like when they do it for that. It damages workplaces effectively because you're not getting the best staff. You're getting it for the sake of skin colour, for diversity rules, which is completely wrong. I mean, I remember when I actually did a course in diversity training in workplaces ages back out of curiosity, and some of the rules that are actually in place within workplaces, just where the employer has to have a certain amount of people of colour or set gender for the sake of equality, it makes zero sense whatsoever, I'd say. I don't think it's fair whatsoever. I think it's, if anything, damaging. It's not going off people's best qualities whatsoever or their best traits anymore. So as an MP, again, I would scrap a lot of those laws that are in place. I don't believe they're right. I would fight against them. I believe in complete equality again, as much as people say we don't, because we believe in scrapping these. The reason we're scrapping them is to replace them with better legislation that believes in complete equality. Not this, it effectively where political correctness has gone. It's gone beyond the realms of equality and more of a shackles, effectively, more of a way to control people, what they can say and can't do, effectively. So scrapping a lot of those legislation would be one of the best things I think we could do to do that. And of course, education needs reforming again. All schools have to do religious education, for example. And if you don't do it, you actually one of the modules you did this in year 10 was democracy, NRE, that you had to do. And the teacher told us how the left wing and right wing work, the definitions. The left wing should define it about everyone and wants to help everybody. And when the teacher grab her out. She said that ring basically about the military and the richer businesses, which is obviously an issue completely. Bias as well in the education. So having people correctly educated to have a fair view of things would be the best way to do things as well.
On the subject of local issues, you are a Wigan native and have served as a general GM chairman for that area's UKIP branch. What could a Mancunian offer the Yorkshire voters of Wakefield?
Obviously, I've not denied at all that I live a bit of distance from the constituency. I have put my full address on the ballot paper for that reason. I didn't want to hide it. I might not strictly live in the area, but I have been to Wakefield countless times, spent a lot of time there, especially in the Wetherspoons. I can't miss that part out. I love the Wetherspoons there, near Westgate Station. That's a brilliant place. I've been to quite a lot of times to Wakefield now, and even the Yorkshire area, from Leeds, Castleford, list goes on. So I might not live there, but my commitment would still be to the people there. Of course, my national policies I've covered a lot, but in local policies for Wakefield, I believe doing things from the grassroots perspective. I won't just appear for a photo opportunity like half the MPs you get do. You'll see me literally on the ground litter picking with members of the community. You'll see me working in food banks in the Wakefield area. I can offer a grassroots approach. I can offer one very important thing. Most of the time when you vote in the general election, what you get at the end is a politician. If you elect me, you won't get a politician. You'll get a public servant, someone who will make you the priority. He doesn't care about the money and the salary. Most of the money will end up literally being paid out of my own pocket to do the area up even further for Wakefield and for local charities in the area. And in terms of helping the people of Wakefield, I believe that I'm passionate enough to help the people of Wakefield, and this election's a perfect time for them to get a true public servant, not just another politician.
Mm-hmm. And on that is like you talked about organizing protests and going to sort of area. Do you think there's sort of familiarity and like organizing all this sort of stuff? What stuff have you adapted from that, as well as your council election campaigns? Like, what sort of stuff have you adapted from all your time being in politics, whether it be organizing protests or doing local election campaigns? What stuff have you learned from that you're going to adapt to this campaign?
I think one of the biggest things I've learned from it is to work with people of different points of view. Obviously, when I set up cross-party demonstrations, you have people from all sorts of parties. I mean, the Social Democratic Party, for example, they were a left-wing party that supported Brexit back in the Brexit days. We had a lot of disagreements. I mean, there's one person that was very interested, who actually I've met, who was part of one of the Communist parties of Britain, because there's two. You got the Communist Party of Britain and you got the Communist Marxist and Leninist Party of Britain. They were the Marxist and Leninist one. And I met her, and it was a very interesting conversations we had. We definitely had areas where we disagree, but we still worked together at the sake of demos and still even organised some things together. I attended some of their demos, they attended some of mine, helped each other out, and that's the way it should be. So I think from my experience, the ability to work with people of all sorts of different ideas would be very beneficial in this if I do get elected, and even while running my campaign.
Mm-hmm. And one of the last questions I wanted to ask you is that if you lose this by-election, what do you plan for your political future?
Well, overall, obviously, I admit I don't live in the area. Our by-elections are very special occasions. A few people put their hat in the ring. There was a gentleman from North East. There was one gentleman even from London. And obviously a few others. And I put my hat in the ring. And obviously I was chosen to represent UKIP in Wakefield. And so forgive me, I keep zoning out a bit today. It's not like me today. I don't know what's up with me. But I think if I do get elected, if I don't get elected, sorry, it doesn't mean I can't do some of the things I promised. So I'll still try and do a few litter picks up there and that, as I promised to do. I'm happy to pay a train for myself, go down there, clean up for a few hours and then go back. I promised to help the area out, and it's what I'll do. And in terms of my political career, obviously, I have stood in local elections in Hindley, where I live, and I do plan, if I lose this general election, to stand here again. I've done a lot in my local area already. I walked from Hindley to Southport to raise money for a memorial garden. That was a 22-mile walk. Every Christmas, I dress up as Santa Claus, handing out presents to the homeless. Working food banks quite regularly. I'm currently volunteering at the Brick, one called the Brick. That's quite a good one. I've also volunteered at HSP and the Hindley and Hindley Green Hub, which was a lockdown one for people isolating. And I do a lot of litter picks, etc. As well. I actually did one a bit earlier today, about an hour before we had this call started. I did a quick one. So I think I'd be standing again in my local area. I got 10% of the vote last time when I stood here, but for my first time standing here, I don't think that's too bad. And especially with me being in traditional Labour area where they vote Labour because, well, the dad voted Labour and his dad voted Labour, and it is the habit I'm trying to break. But no matter what, I could be 80, 90 odd and never win an election, and I'll still keep standing to try to give people, the rights to choose and to try and do my part for the area. My general priority is to try to improve the quality of life, not only for the people there now, but for the people of the future that'll be living there.
Mm-hmm. Well, put your name out there and on the calling card at least, I suppose. Anyway, what the penultimate question I wanted to ask you, and this is the title of the show, and it's why I ask all my guests, is what would your ideal world be?
My ideal world would be a world where we can all agree to disagree, where taken aboard, and that everybody's ideas are acted on in a way where what everybody wants can happen to an extent. Obviously, it'll never be perfect, of course, but everyone gets a bit of what they wanted to a point where everybody gets represented. No matter how small their opinion is, no matter how unpopular, everybody gets a bit of what they wanted out of life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and thank you for coming on. And to those who want to find out more about you and your campaign, where can they go? What social media do you have?
I'm on Facebook, and you can find me on Facebook, Jordan Gaskell. Twitter, it's just Jordan Gaskell 8 because someone stole Jordan Gaskell, so I have to have a number. And then Instagram and Getter, I managed to get the same name, Jordan_Gaskell_.
Okay. Thank you for coming on today, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and share this video, as well as subscribe to the Ed Interviews YouTube channel, and also the Ed Interviews BitChute channel, and also look at my stuff on Mixcloud as well. I have more of this content coming in, and also subscribe to my Patreon subscribe star as well for more guest requests, as well as free copies of my old books. Until then, see you next time, guys.